One machine quilting design that I really struggle with is quilting nice elongated curves. It's really hard to keep that consistency over that big of an area. So this is where arc rulers really come in handy. Hello and welcome to the third week of the Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. I'm Angela Walters from Quilting is My Therapy, and this week we're talking all about arcs. We're going to be creating some motifs, learning how to echo, and also how to make our arc rulers a little bit more versatile. I'll show you how to stretch it out, shrink it up, and make it fit the shape you need it to fit. Of course, there are many types on the market. Basically what we're looking for is just something with a nice elongated curve, and it doesn't have to be the same on both sides. I really like these Arc A rulers. It's a set of multiple sizes, and each one has a different curve on either side, kind of giving me a little bit more bang for my quilting buck. In general, having a larger arc ruler is going to be a little bit easier to manage, but if you don't have quite as much throat space, a smaller one will definitely work as well. All right, so I'm going to use my arc ruler. We're going to get right to it and learn how to do a little bit of echoing. Now, I can practically guarantee that you will not always have the same shape ruler as the block that you're echoing around, but I'm going to show you how you can work around that. What I'm going to do is only quilt along part of it and then shift and continue. Starting with my needle in position, I'm going to place the ruler looking at the curve and trying to find the area that it fits the best. Now, the great thing about these rulers is I can see where the line's going to end up. Now, at this moment, it's not going to end up so great, but I'm going to actually shift it as I go to create that curve. So I'm going to press down on the ruler and quilt along the curve until I start to get further away from the block. All right, at that point, I'm starting to veer away from there, so I'm going to reposition and then continue along. So that first line quilted. Now, when I want to go around the other side, I'm going to have to reposition the ruler and continue along. I've rotated the quilt so you can see exactly what I'm doing. However, if I were doing this on an actual quilt, I wouldn't do that. I would leave it in place. And that means I'm going to have to get comfortable working from all sides of the foot with that ruler. If you're newer to quilting and that seems like a little too hard, don't worry, just reposition the quilt and make it easier on yourself. So I'm going to keep doing that, working my way around, and then we'll do some arcs on the inside of the block. Now, let's use our arc ruler to create a design inside the piecing. What I'm going to do is create curved lines that go from point to point to point to create a complex looking design. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the echoing, using just a portion of the ruler to give me the line that I need. My first curvy line is going to go from the midpoint of the center block, then it's going to arc out to one of the petals. I want it to kind of swing out and then come to this point. Well, I can tell when I line my ruler up that it's not going to go out quite as far as I want it to go. So I'm going to do the same kind of thing where I'm going to reposition the ruler halfway to give me that arc that I want. So I have my first line, and I want to add another one inside of there. Except this time I'm going to quilt another line to the other point. Turn this so you can see what I'm doing. And quilt another line that goes back to my starting point. And this is where we're going to see that working from all sides of the foot is really going to be more efficient for you. Again, taking a moment to pause, make sure that the line's going where I want it to go, and then quilting along the ruler. So pretty, and I think I'm going to add one more inside of here just for fun. All right, and there's my first petal, and I can repeat that in all four sides until I get the whole thing done. I'm using this contrasting thread so that you can really see what I'm doing on the quilt. This would look much better if I were using the red thread that's in the coordinating thread collection. Quilting these lines in groups of 3 ensures that I can quilt the whole block without starting and stopping. Being able to shift this around makes it a lot easier to quilt. On a long arm, we don't have that option. So let's go try this design on the long arm and talk about the differences. Now, the biggest difference to quilting this on the long arm is that I'm going to have to get comfortable working in all different directions. And that means I'm going to probably make some funny hand placements. As I come around this side, I'm still going to hold the ruler in place. I'm going to quilt along part of it and then reposition. And I think you'll find that quilting some directions are easier than others. For instance, when I get to this side of my block, I'm be tricky because my hand is going to kind of block my quilting. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I have the ruler positioned correctly. And as soon as I get to my hand, I'm going to stop and reposition my hand. Again, remembering that I have to move my hand as I move along the ruler and making sure the ruler stays in place. All right, here's another tricky one. So I'm going to position the ruler first, make sure I like where it's at. Then as soon as I can't go any further, I'll reposition my hand. And what I love about it is that you can use just one ruler to create arcs of all different sizes. Curved echoing looks so great on a quilt, but it can be a little bit of a pain. But here's a cool trick. Even if the shape of your echo doesn't completely match up with the shape of your design, as long as the lines are smooth, it'll look good. So I'm going to echo around the outside of these using my ruler, and even though it's not quite the same shape, it's going to be fine. The trick is to keep the line smooth and just add a few echo lines. Even though it's not the same shape, it still looks nice. And just because the shape curves one way doesn't mean you have to quilt your curved line the same way. In these outer portions, the line curves out, but I'm going to quilt it so that it curves in. Basically, I just want you to play around and create a bunch of different designs by quilting your arc lines in all different directions. Now we know what to do if the ruler is too big for an area or you need a different shape, but what do you do if the ruler is too small? Well, now we're going to make a partial motif and use echoing to fill in larger areas. So I have my bigger block right here, but let's pretend I'm using this ruler and I want to create some kind of motif, but it's not quite long enough. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is shrink that area down just a bit. Basically, I'm going to make a smaller square. I'm going to use my design line stencil to help make that happen. You can use a ruler or any kind of marking tool. And I'm going to mark this point right here. I'm going to pretend like this smaller bit is going to be my square. And I'm going to mark my line over here and my line over here. These are going to be my reference points. Marking just the reference dots instead of all the lines in the whole design is going to make the removal process so much easier. Now for this, I'm going to quilt a line that's going to curve out to my point, to the next one and back, and then to this one. Then I'm going to add a couple echo lines and then fill in the rest with some free motion filler to finish out the block. And I'm going to quilt a line that arcs to this corner. All my lines are going to come back to this point. That's kind of like my home base. So if you're not sure where to go, you're going to go to home base. I'm going to quilt another one that goes out to that furthest point and then back. Now for the first time we're seeing if my ruler isn't quite long enough, right? We're going to do the same thing we did before where we quilt part of it and shift, except this time we're not doing it to change the shape, we're doing it to extend our line. Taking a second to kind of picture where this line's going to go, make sure it's kind of on the right trajectory. Much better to take your time here than to end up with quilting that has to come out. And then repositioning. And as I'm repositioning, I'm looking for that dot that I need to hit, and I'm keeping the ruler about 1/4 of an inch away from it, right? Because if I want to land right on that dot, I can't be right on it. And then finishing up the first arc. There's my first big arc, and I'm going to go back to my home base doing the same thing. Quilting to about the halfway mark and then repositioning. And I'm almost done, just one last line, and then I'll have the first part of my motif finished. There's the first part of my motif, but the problem is it's not filling in the area, right? I need a little bit more quilting in here to really fill it in. So I'm going to use my arc ruler and add a couple of echoes around this design, and then fill in the rest with some kind of filler. If I have to guess, it's probably going to be swirls. I'm getting ready to add my echo lines, but this time I'm not actually going to travel. I'm just going to swing my arc ruler out a bit to where it ends up about 1/4 or 1/2 of an inch away from that next line, and then echo around it. This is really going to force you to quilt those arcs in all different directions to get comfortable with using different portions of your ruler, either extending it out or using just a portion of it to create different designs. Well, once you get the hang of this, all those arc rulers that you have will be so much more versatile. And remember, you don't have to quilt it in one smooth motion. You can stop and reposition and take your time. Now, when quilting this design in all different directions, there's going to be times when you can't really see where you're going. So if I have to, I'll kind of do the scooch down and look behind the needle thing. Or I could just reposition the quilt as well. Now, of course, I could add some more echoes, but you know, sometimes quilting with rulers, you want to switch it up. And hey, if you like this video or tutorial, I hope you'll subscribe or give it a thumbs up. That'll help other quilters find it as well. Okay, so now it's your turn. If you're quilting along with me on the custom panel for the challenge, quilt arc designs in the areas highlighted in red. You can create motifs, you can echo them, do whatever you like. And if you're not sure where to put those designs, I have downloadable quilting diagrams that will show you the perfect placement. Well, thanks for joining me today. I'll be back next week where we talk about quilting with cutout rulers, one of my favorites. Happy quilting!